welcome to Lead Live, reminding you of your personal genius and how you think in order to actualize what you desire.
Hello, hello. Thank you for joining us today here at Lead Live. We have a special guest, a very dear loved one who's joining us today. Her name is Christine Harris. And when we were talking about titles, she came up with something that we both thought was compelling. We changed it, but we're going to come back to that, why that title, Dump Drama from Blocking Your Dreams, was so powerful. And yet we ended up with Overcome Drama and Realize Your Dream, because we know there's much more to just dumping drama. There's actual work, there's actual clarity in deciding what your big picture is for your life, the vision, and what dreams inform that vision, and then the goals you establish and the actions you take, leveraging certain strategies, leveraging certain experts who've done it before or who could inform you on your journey. So while we may not talk about all the details that I just referenced, we really want you to hear from Christine Harris because, like previous guests have indicated, life can be quite remarkable. And some of that remarkable nature is not necessarily good. And yet we have the power within us to literally persist. We have resilience embedded in our DNA to actually break through even traumas or tear barriers in order to get to a place that we envision for ourselves. So I'd like to introduce this remarkable woman, Christine Harris. Who is she? And I'm just going to get to the tip of the iceberg and then ask Jet to bring her into the studio so you get to see this remarkable and humble young soul. Or maybe old soul, I should say, right, Christine?
Well, depends on how you look at it.
Well, as you see this remarkable dear loved one of mine, she's a former radio and television journalist who's been active in civil life for more than 50 years. Upbringing entailed being a product of military family. She graduated with honors from Munich American High School in Germany in 1967. Her education includes 1971 graduate of Indiana University in Bloomington. She was among the first cohort of students to graduate with a degree in African American Studies with a second major in mass communications. And so her career has been rather rich. Her initial career started off in communications and journalism, and she's retired as a journalist. She was past president of the Chicago Association of Black Journalists, diversity advocate in journalism for university. But let me back up a little bit. She worked in radio and television journalism in Washington, D.C., Louisville, Kentucky, Chicago, Illinois, and was an award winning general assignment consumer and education reporter. And as a community affairs show host, a TV and radio anchor, and a guest radio commentator. So she really should be facilitating this session, even with herself, because she has brilliance that goes beyond anything that I've touched. During that same period, she served as president of the Chicago Association of Black Journalists, was an active member of the Louisville Association of Black Journalists, and coordinated a National Association of Black Journalists convention. Her advocacy work is more than what I'm going to share right now. It included her transitioning from broadcast journalism to advocacy work for diversity of coverage and employment in the newspaper profession, as well as increased access to journalism career opportunities for students of color. She was based at Northwestern University Medill School of Journalism at the time, and she worked through the consortium of advancement of minorities in journalism education to increase enrollment among those students and others in 9 graduate professionalism or journalism programs across the nation. She also served as the staff for the Minorities Committee for the American Society of Newspaper Editors, and worked to upgrade communications programs based at 6 historically Black colleges and universities. Now, that's just the tip of the iceberg. She has a legacy since 2005. She has been a supporter of Bay Area jazz and blues musicians. You mentioned Christine Harris's name to many well known and local artists. My goodness, they're like, oh, yeah, we know that sister. She organized this, she had us here, etc. She supported us. And that as a result of her work, she was honored at least by the San Francisco Human Relations Commission, San Francisco Supervisor, now Mayor London Breed, and the San Francisco chapter of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women. Now, this another part of her legacy, and dear and really the essence of what arguably informed her genius and how she moves in life, is her decision to build a family. She moved to the Bay Area, and over and during that 28-year period of being in the Bay Area, she lived in Los Gatos all the way to Albany, where she resides now. She served on a number of boards, including the Children's Discovery Museum in San Jose and Montalvo Arts Center in Saratoga. And she had a significant stint with the College of Education, or excuse me, Ethnic Studies at San Francisco State University. Most significantly, which I was getting to and now I'm getting to, is she has 3 grown children, 4 grandchildren, 2 great grandchildren, and another on the way. She's married twice or twice married and divorced, both times to journalists, and she remains good friends with both of her ex-husbands. Now, she and I have special more loves. We share godchildren, and I'm honored to be able to do that with her and have done that with her. I mean, I feel like I've known her all my life. We've not known each other our respective lives, but it's deep and abiding and remarkable to watch our godchildren grow, and flourish. So, with that introduction, a little bit more than Christine would probably want, and I want to honor you, Christine, because your legacy is more than what I've just conveyed, and yet I want people to have some sense of who you are, just a little bit. And yet, I'd like for you to share something that people would not find if they were to look on the internet. What salient information you'd like to share about yourself that's quite reflective of who you are at your core?
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for that lengthy introduction. It's somewhat embarrassing. Uh, and it's sort of interesting that you asked me to tell people about myself, things that you wouldn't find on the internet. And it just so happened that I thought, you know what? I think she's probably going to open with me saying some things. And so I better put down some written things so I won't forget what it is I want to say. I'm usually pretty good at talking off the top of my head, but there were some points I wanted to make. And it just so happens it lined up with your introduction. And so I'm calling this little section about me, things about me you wouldn't find on the internet, as it turns out. So, point one.
Already, Helen has said impressive. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Helen. Oh, Helen, my dear, dear friend in Hawaii. And my sister, her mother and my father were best, her mother and my mother were best friends.
Oh, I love
Her
that.
mother and my mother took us into East Berlin in 1966. Helen is absolutely brilliant, is fluent in French and German, and her father was my minister when I was in high school. So her family and she have had a profound influence on me. So I'm deeply honored that she's joined us. And thank you, Helen. Anyway, about me. Getting back to the subject at hand. You know, one of the first things I thought is that my journey is not to be all that, all those things you ticked off. Yeah, I've done a lot of things. I've even met a lot of famous people, and I've moved in some pretty rarefied circles, but that doesn't define me at all. At the end of the day, who I am in my heart defines me. And the more clarity I have about that and about what my values are, then the less I'm caught up in the drama of others and their journeys and struggles. And so I can learn, and I am learning how to empathize with others, how to have compassion for others, but without carrying their baggage or becoming codependent. And so that's a big lesson I've learned. And just as an aside, I look at what's going on in the world today, whether it be COVID or Ukraine. Um, I see so many people, and I might even put Putin in that category, who want to be victims and create all kinds of drama around their victim story. Russia has been robbed of its grand status as a major power, and he's going to change that before he dies. And there's no regard for the suffering and consequences that will cause for others. And so taking responsibility for our actions and how they impact others is really important to me. Real leadership to me requires humility. At the end of the day, there are only about 6 or 7 storylines in the universe. If you talk to a fiction writer, they'll tell you there are not many basic stories. There's only about 6. So all of us who think that somehow our story is unique and different, and we're afraid to share it because we might be embarrassed, forget it. Somebody else has already experienced it. It's not new to you. They have their own little twist on it, their own little angle. But at the end of the day, your story is just one of those basic stories in the universe. And so as a result, I approach leadership with a great deal of humility, and I try to be an open book about my own experiences, including my painful experiences. And by the way, this is an aside. If anybody in your audience wants to ask any questions about specifics of that, there's very little I don't talk about. So feel free to ask whatever you want to ask. And the reason I'm very open and I listen to other people's stories, I'm always looking for universal truths that bind us together, and I'm looking for my authenticity, and I'm hoping that by example, and which is soft leadership, that I can encourage others to look deeper into themselves for their own authentic being. It takes courage to be authentic, because when you're authentic, you can't just look at the parts of you that you like. You have to look at all of you, the good, the bad, the ugly, the warts, and everything. And you have to embrace all of that. It's ironic I should say that right now. Well, not ironic, it's actually specifically meaningful. There are several people in my life who are dealing, when I say my life, I mean, I have hundreds of friends all over the world. So I'm talking on that level. I'm not pinpointing any particular individual, but there are so many in my life. So I know there are millions in the world who are dealing with all kinds of issues, whether it's sexual identity, whether it's physical limitations, whether it's mental health issues, a whole range of subjects. Whatever it is that person has to deal with, I'm coming to the conclusion that the only path to real happiness and authenticity is to embrace all of that in yourself. And that's the only way not only you become authentic, but you empower yourself. And I've had about 3 or 4 conversations this week with very different people, specifically about mental health issues. Somebody who was very dear to me died 2 weeks ago at age 73, and he was a schizophrenic, a diagnosed schizophrenic since he was about 19 years old. And yet, this is a man who went on eventually to live a very rich and full life because he was able to embrace that part of him and the medication that was required to give him the freedom to function. And he did that. And that empowered him. And so empowering self is really important to me. Empowering self also means you have to own your stuff.
Mm.
So when you mess up and you hurt other people, you have to go a little bit deeper and say, oops, I messed up, but then come up with some little surface story or say, but yeah, they had it coming. No, 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 no. There's no they had it coming. It's why did you do what you did? And what do you think the impact of your actions were on that person? And you have to think deeply about that. And I learned that lesson, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago, where I had done something really hurtful to a person. And they let me know it hurt. And I thought about it and I thought, oh, well, that's hurtful. And I wrote a letter saying, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, that hurt you. But, you have to understand where I'm coming from. Well, at the time, I had a really good friend who died a few months ago. And I took the liberty of showing him the letter before I sent it. And he said, I don't think this is going to accomplish what you want it to accomplish. And that was my signal to go deeper and say, well, okay, what am I missing? What am I missing? And it's a funny thing, you have within you this deep inner voice, spirit voice. I don't know what it is, but well, I do, but I have my definition, but I think everybody has their own. So I want to acknowledge that. And that is when you get to the real truth, not your sort of BS truth, that voice will go ding, 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 ding. You got it right. You got it right. And in this case, I realized I had hurt this person once before, and I had asked for forgiveness, and they had forgiven me, and we had developed a wonderful relationship. And then I did something thoughtlessly and inadvertently and hurt them again. Well, most people, they give you one chance, but you mess up a second time and they shut down. And I lost that relationship and I understood people shut down. They're not going to allow themselves to be hurt again. And that's what they should do. But the price to me was I lost a relationship that I valued. And so that was a painful, painful lesson. But I had to learn that lesson so that I don't continue to make that mistake with other people. So going deeper and learning the real lesson and growing from that, that's what I try to do. Do you mind me blabbing on a little bit more?
Please, I welcome it. I think this is invaluable. I know you, so I know some of the stories, and they're powerful, folks. Go ahead, Christine.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Now, I'm not sure which is the horse and which is the cart. So I'll just start with one. What you didn't mention in your opening for me is I'm biracial. My mother was German and my father was African American from South Carolina. Two incredibly phenomenal people. And you knew them. They were remarkable people, very humble, and they walked the walk. They weren't preachy, but they had their values and they lived those values. And so I guess they are my greatest role models. My father had a dry sense of humor. So he used to call me his thoroughly bred. And then we get a laugh at that I'm his thoroughly bred. But over time, I've come to realize that I really am a thoroughly bred person. Between my father and my own profession and married life, I have moved so many times. As you alluded, I lived in Japan and Germany. In this country, I've lived in Indiana, Illinois, Massachusetts, Virginia, Florida, and now California. And it's possible I forgot a state along the way. But in any event, and not only have I lived in a lot of different communities or states and countries and cities. This, by the way, is my 9th move in the Bay Area in 28 years. But I also have been in relationship with a lot of different communities, with a lot of different values and attitudes and ideas. And I look at how diverse our country is today, um, and I think I'm probably more sympathetic to the views of a lot of people than most people are. Most people, they're anchored in their own belief system, and people believe their own belief system is the right one. And
Of
it's
course.
like those people, they're crazy. You know, what's wrong with them? Especially you see it with COVID right now. And my vision is not so clear cut because I know too many people from too many communities with so many different values. And when I say different communities, I'm talking about friendships that range from my self described hillbilly friends to Black nationalists, to Jewish friends, to Muslim friends, to Lebanese relative. I mean, it just goes on and on and on, and every class conceivable along the way. And people who are almost homeless, and people who are CEOs of some of the biggest tech companies in Silicon Valley. So my range of interaction is broader than the average person. And so I have an appreciation, I think, for humanity and an acceptance for differences. And so it's caused me to have a very eclectic approach to life and a very thoroughbred approach to life. So I come full circle in that regard. Some core organizing principles for me.
Mhm.
For me, life is about choosing love over fear.
Mm.
And in my world, I've reduced it to the positive and the negative. So the positive would be love, and the negative would be fear. And I have found in general that negative forces and fear that includes insecurity, jealousy, resentment, all of those negative emotions that come under fear. I find that often they lead to poor choices and bad outcomes.
Mm. Mhm.
And again, I have to go to Putin. I see this very much at play with Putin, a man who is just obsessed with his, I guess, his need for a place in history
Mm.
to bring Russia back to what he perceives as its rightful place in the universe, or in the world. And with no and to me that's based really in a deep-seated insecurity rather than just accepting. Why can't Russia be what it is? Why does it have to be this grandiose vision that he has? And to me that comes from a place of insecurity, and he is willing to let thousands of people die and historical buildings be destroyed, environments be destroyed for this obsession that to me is just not rooted in a healthy place. I prefer to be rooted in a place of love. And I think that when you come from a place of love, you have a sense of abundance.
Mhm. Mm.
And so you don't mind sharing and building a community. You're not rooted in resentment or jealousy of others. You're happy when they have something. And so to me, love leads to joy and peace. Why would you want to fight with anybody? So that's one of my organizing principles. Another one is I see myself as a creative being. Well, I see all people as creative beings who are skilled at problem solving. And the only question is, how much confidence do you have in your ability to solve? Well, you didn't ask me to tell my age, but since I'm an open book, I'm 72 and a half. And so I figure in 72 years, I've solved a problem or two in my life. And I think I can solve the next one that comes along. So I just don't sweat it. You know, I think the first time I realized I could solve problems was back in, it would have been around 1975, 74, something like that. And I was living in Chicago. And I lived in an apartment complex that was right next to a hospital on the south side, Michael Reese Hospital, for those of you who know Chicago, Prairie Shores. And there was a grocery store between the housing complex and the hospital. And I walked there one night. It was in the winter, so it was probably 5:30, and the time had already changed. So it was dark. And at the time, I was a smoker. I haven't smoked since 1980, but I was a smoker. And I'm walking back towards my apartment with not a care in the world. And I look to my left. I'm walking this way. The apartment building is further down on my left. And I'm by the building that's next to my building. And there's a driveway with cars in the parking lot. And there's a guy walking there. And this guy walking, I look over at him, and he wasn't that close to me. And he looked away. And right there, my inner voice, as it turns out, spirit, my inner child, call it whatever name you will, says to me, uh-oh, ding, 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 that guy is going to try to rob you or rape you, but he's going to do something bad to you. And so you need to get away. So at that moment, my inner voice took over, and my inner voice said, okay, Christine, now, number one, you can't let this guy know that you know what he's up to. That's number one. So that means you have to keep walking at the same pace you're currently walking. And then number two, you need to go into your pocket and you need to get your key out, but do it in such a way where he doesn't know that's what you're doing, and have your key ready and just keep walking at the same pace. And I'm going to tell you when to run. And because the voice is even explaining to me, because right now there's so much distance between where you are right now and that front door to your building that you can't outrun that guy. So you have to get close enough to the building where you can put the key in the door and get inside, and you got a chance of getting away before he gets to you. So I keep going along and not panicked, perfectly calm, because I'm listening to the general here. And all of a sudden, this voice says, run. And I ran, and somehow the key slid right into the lock, and I opened the door. I went into the building, and just as I pulled the door behind me, his hand grabbed for the door, and he missed me by a quarter of a second. Turns out the security guard had been watching it from the second floor, and so he came down the elevator. And the elevator door opened, and he said, are you all right? And so it all worked out. But that taught me, and I've since read, by the way, from some guy, and I didn't read it. I think I heard it on NPR years ago with some guy who was a security expert. And he explained that we are our own worst enemy, that we in fact do have this subconscious voice. And if we freak out and panic, we gum up the whole system and we can't save ourselves. Whereas if we just get out of our own way, this inner voice will solve our problem, this inner being, and odds are we'll be just fine. So I have learned to have complete faith in my ability, or the inner being's ability, to solve problems for me. And, it won't always work, but then there's no guarantees in life that things will always work. But it's done me all right to now. Do I have time for?
Go for it.
Okay. I referenced this one already, and that is that life is governed by possibility, not probability. I'm sorry, governed by probability, not possibility. Now, I really hope my children are not listening to this. I told them, because their eyes would be rolling about now, because they're listening to me with the probability versus possibility their entire lives, and they really don't want to hear it anymore. And it's become a family joke. Oh, there she goes again. But, think about it. If you spend your energy thinking about what's possible, I don't know about you, but I would go stark raving mad. I mean, because what do? You can't stay in bed and hide from the world, because a tornado might come along and a tree will drop on your roof and kill you. I mean, so what are you going to do? I mean, if you think about every possibility, there's nothing you can do. because there's a possibility it won't work out. So you just can't focus on, or I can't focus on possibility. So I've gotten really good at probability. And I always think in terms of probability. COVID, for instance, is pretty good, and it's allowed me, because I pay a lot of attention to the data coming out. And I mean, I'm not brilliant at reading data. I'm not a scientist or a researcher or a doctor, but I listen to um, a number of sources, whether it be in newspapers or on television, trusted sources. And I kind of cobble all of that together. And essentially, with vaccination, from what every source I trust is saying to date, it's saying, this whole thing about breakthroughs, it's really kind of misleading. And when I heard, it was actually Sanjay Gupta who said that on CNN. And that was the most eye-opening explanation about COVID I've heard. And it's been extremely helpful to me. First of all, he was saying, breakthrough, the way people are using it. So let's say there's an 85% efficacy with your COVID vaccination. Okay, well, what that doesn't really get you to understand is the COVID vaccination is not designed to keep you from getting COVID. It never was.
Exactly.
It's designed to keep it out of your lungs. And so when you look at this breakthrough data, you realize it doesn't even make sense, because at the end of the day, what that 85% is saying, there's an 85% chance if you're vaccinated, you won't get COVID at all. But that still leaves the other 15%. Now, of that other 15%, what the data is showing, and as far as I know, it hasn't really changed that much after millions of people getting the vaccine. The data seems to be holding up. 14% of that 15 means, yeah, it's going to break through and you might get flu-like symptoms, but you're not going to, and it's not going to get into your lungs. And you're not going to end up in the hospital or on a ventilator or dead. So in other words, really, if you're vaccinated and boosted, and to me, being vaccinated means 2 shots and a booster and maybe another booster, who knows. But in any event, what it means is there's only a 1% chance that you will end up in a serious pickle of the virus getting into your lungs and causing serious complications. Now, getting back to my possibility probability, you know what? I can live with a 1% probability or possibility. The probability is 99% that even if I get it, I'm going to get okay. I can live with that. So I don't have to be paranoid. I can still be cautious and rational. And I'm making this decision for myself because I don't have serious autoimmune complications that other people have. I have a friend who has a heart transplant, and she's had 6 vaccines and she has no protection. And she knows that. And so she knows that she always will have to be more cautious than others. And I have other friends who know they have to be more cautious. So at the end of the day, you have to figure out, well, where do I really fall in that 1% and determine how careful you're going to be.
Now, when you mentioned life is governed for you by probability versus possibility, and this is a longstanding understanding that you've had, that you've shared with your children, you're sharing that because it's part of your formula for not letting drama dictate the course of your life, right?
I would say I would phrase it a little bit differently, but I'll get back to the drama in just a minute, which I was going to deal with more heavily in my next point. But I think each of us, we all have our own level of tolerance for risk. And I think we need to look at ourselves and say, okay, so the drama you want to get the best information out there, but then you want to look inward. So there's this inward outward balance, and you need to know yourself. Now, some people, they might have the same level of risk that I have, but they don't have the same tolerance for risk I have. So, and they need to know that about themselves. So there are times now when I might go out if I think I'm not going to affect anybody else. I've been testing a lot lately, so I know I'm in pretty good shape. So I'm not worried about infecting anybody else right now. And I might go out without a mask in certain situations. In fact, I was in a music venue the other night, and I noticed I was wearing my mask a lot less more than other people were. And some of them, I'm sure, had autoimmune issues they had to deal with. Some of them hadn't been tested recently and were worried that they would infect others. And yet there were others who just were, their risk level, they're not as comfortable with risk as I am. And so it's going to take them a lot longer. So knowing where you are in how you handle risk. I might go out at night at times where other people wouldn't, because it's just too much risk for them. And I have friends who say, I didn't live till I was 80 years old to have something bad happen now. So there are a lot of situations they won't even put themselves in, whereas I'll still do some. I'm not reckless, I'm not saying that, but my risk level is different. And then let me see, there was inward versus outward looking. This is the drama and dumping drama from my life. And that's kind of hard to do in this world of narcissistic social media. I mean, we are just pulled into social media. And, sometimes it's nice in social media, like on old-fashioned, old-time Facebook, which is not really in vogue with a lot of young people. But, I'm able to connect with these friends all over the world and the country. I don't go on Facebook very often, but when I do, it's nice to see, who's had grandchildren, this or that. Sometimes the news isn't happy and I can be supportive, but every now and then it's nice to tap into that. But sometimes when we get into social media, it's not about us connecting in healthy relationship with others. It's often about social media manipulating our feelings and pulling us into community that really isn't who we are. But they're able to manipulate our feelings and our fears. So we think it's a community that we're about. And I just had that happen recently with a friend who is a wonderful guy, a very caring, bright, compassionate guy. And he has been sucked into the sort of the anti-vaxxer movement. And it was very clever how he was set up, because there are people out there who are in that world who are very good at manipulating, but I would say wrongfully manipulating data and leading you. And this is a guy who believes in data. And so if he follows the logic, he follows them down the rabbit hole. And that's what's happened to him. And, he's still my friend. And I understand how he got there, because this is a friend who has autoimmune issues and has been self-isolating a lot. And I don't think he's the kind of guy who has a lot. He doesn't have a huge network of friends the way I do to draw on. And I've seen them not only with him, but with some other people where they spend an inordinate amount of time on the internet looking for community. And once you put yourself in that position, then it's real easy to be pulled down a rabbit hole. And so it's all a way of saying that, to me, the journey for life really is an inward journey, and going deeper into yourself and trying to make sense of the balance between, because we are human beings and we do live on this planet, the balance between the outer world and our inner world.
So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Because you shared a lot of content and some key stories. You indicated up front, release other people's drama. It's not yours. You don't need to take it on. You talked about being humble, having humility.
Mhm.
Being an open book is part of your leadership predisposition. And you indicated that you're really core about being authentic and understanding universal truths, that's what drives you, and that's important to you. You being authentic is a precondition to being courageous. In fact, when you are, you're more courageous, and it takes courage. And that embracing yourself is really empowering yourself, owning your stuff, whatever it is, good, bad, or indifferent. I would add accepting yourself fully and even forgiving yourself consistently when there. And I know we've talked about the importance of forgiving self, and and then coming from a sense of love and having that sense of abundance as a result. When you say dump drama or stop it from blocking your dreams in order for you to move toward 10 steps, actualize your dreams, how did you do that? I mean, I have a lot of leadership questions here, but how did you do that? Because I'm thinking about your professional life where you had drama. I'm thinking about your personal life where you had drama. I'm thinking about the outer experiences where you had drama. I'm thinking about the inner experience where you had drama. How did you have some kind of formulaic way, or did you just learn through being authentic in that moment and hearing and listening? How did that um, what was that process like for you to release
Well,
drama?
yeah. Good question. I have always been very much an open book, and I'm very eclectic. And I've combined those two aspects of who I am to saying, you know what, you can find wisdom anywhere. And so, in that sense, I'm very eclectic. I'm very, multimedia. You can get wisdom out of a comic book, out of a Hallmark movie, out of a Bible, out of, there's so many. And then you can get wisdom out of music, out of dance, out of theater. So out of conversations with other people. And they don't even have to be brilliant people. They can just be ordinary people just telling their story. So I remain open. I'm like a sponge trying to pull in these wisdoms, these pearls from any source where I can find it. And it's amazing, where it can show up. Um, so just being very open and to a variety of sources and not being narrow-minded. And also, I think not thinking that it's like there's a right or a wrong. Um, that sometimes it can all coexist. There's in this world, we're all kinds of people, and we have to make a choice. I mean, if we say it's my way or the highway, well, once you get to that place, then you're just going to want to kill everybody who isn't your way. And to me, that is not a moral, ethical, or acceptable way to live. So if it's not, then you got to figure out how to get along. And
Helen asked, how do you even recognize that drama is what is going on? Isn't it easy to be in denial about the existence of drama? Thank you, Helen.
yeah, thank you, Helen. I used to be in denial, but the more I come in contact with my own authenticity, my own inner child, whatever you want to call it, the more I can feel the tension with others where it isn't authentic, and the more sensitive I become to that tension. I had to walk away from a relationship not too long ago, um, with a great deal of compassion. And it's still, painful for me because I really cared about this person. But this was a person with a lot of wounded child issues. And at some point in our relationship, as we became closer, and I'm, as you can see, a very open and authentic person. And if somebody says something, I might question them, and maybe a little bit harshly. I don't mean meanly, but pointedly. And it turns out this person with unresolved issues, when I started becoming more of who I was, it became a threat to that person.
Mm.
And this was a person who, I don't know that they've ever gone to therapy. I think their approach is to sweep issues under the carpet and then just, get a stiff upper lip and go back out there into the real world. So things really aren't resolved. And eventually the behavior of this person started becoming passive aggressive with me. Because this person was feeling hurt, they were looking for opportunities to lash back at me and set me up for hurt. And I tried having a conversation with this person so we could get to a more authentic level, and it just wasn't going to happen. And I realized that this was not a healthy relationship for me anymore, and that I would just simply have to distance myself from that relationship. And I grieved the loss of that relationship. And I still have a great deal of love in my heart for that person and compassion, because I know that, like most of us, like all of us, we're all kind of doing the best we can at the moment, given what we have to work with. Um, so with time, I've just become more sensitive to where other people are in their journey. And I ask myself, is this compatible with where I am in my journey? And it's not that I want to throw people overboard, but I realize the more I focus on the path in my journey, there's just no space and time and room for that. So yeah.
I think that's a powerful question because, quite frankly, Helen, and for many people who have that same question, deal with it or experience it, understand the importance of it. When we evolve, well, however we evolve, and it's not really judgmental. As you evolve, certain people didn't work anymore for whatever reason. You wanted those relationships to work, but they could not work because the nature of who you were at that moment as you transition into a new paradigm wasn't the person that the other individual expected, was familiar with, wanted, was attracted to, whatever, whether it's in a work relationship, whether it's in a personal, intimate relationship. As we shift, as we change, as we transform, as we move from one paradigm to another, some people come with us because they're also shifting, or they were there to begin with, and we're
That's
moving in that direction. And then others find it uncomfortable, and they're not ready to shift, nor should they have to. Their lives are their lives. However,
That's right.
the
And
power,
conversely, I
and
was
the
going to
power,
say, and conversely, other people shift and they have the right to move away from you. And
got it. You
which
got it.
leads to another point that I wanted to make. And this comes from more Buddhist thinking that I've been doing. And I remember early, maybe 15 years, the source of all suffering is our own ego. And in my very simplistic approach to thinking at that time, I was thinking, well, wait a minute, how can my ego, which is my identity, be the source of my own suffering? And then I randomly at a spa I had some extra time and I picked up a book in the spa, which I bought and I still have. And it's something like, I don't know, the 10 best Buddhist essays of 2011 or something like that. And one of them in there talked about the ego. And it set it up in such a way where it was saying, well, I am afraid that you might have more than I do. So therefore, I have to hoard. I am afraid that, I don't know, you are prettier than I am. So you'll have more men around you than I will. Whatever the I is. And it turned out to be, I am afraid. And then that led me to thinking about the Garden of Eden, or whatever you want to put on that place called, perfect human. where humans are living in harmony with abundance, very loving place where people are sharing and caring. And then what happens when you have one person who pulls away from that and says, oh, wait a minute, all this sharing stuff? If I share, what happens if there's a drought? I won't have enough. I better hold some stuff on the side, withhold, and not share so freely. And the moment you start pulling away from the group like that, you're starting to not only undermine the group, but you're playing into your own fears.
Mm.
Hence, the group, this Garden of Eden, being love and perfection, and then the human experience, the insecurities, the fears being the negative. And that was sort of so I'm very sensitive to where people are in that scale and of insecurity and being loving and rooted in something positive. I don't know if that answers the question.
I want to add more to your answer because I think this is powerful. When you're in a paradigm, and what is that? When you're in, you have a certain mindset. You have values that align with those mindsets, usually, not always. And you're functioning in a certain way. Your behaviors are pretty consistent. Your feelings about your conditions are pretty consistent. Even if you don't like your conditions, even if you find them dreadful, you've accepted them and you're comfortable in them. And everybody around you have accepted those dreadful conditions and they're comfortable. They don't like them. And there may be emotional distress. In fact, they're comfortable with being emotionally distressed. And so drama is part of the common currency. And so if that's what you're living all day long, 24/7, every day of the year, and for years and decades, if you're fortunate enough to live decades and decades, then all of a sudden, anyone who comes in who is not drama filled and who looks at drama and says, oh, that's your stuff, and keeps walking, you will want to attack or wonder what's their problem. They're in a completely different paradigm. So Helen, my humble perspective, isn't it easy to be in denial about the existence of drama? I firmly believe it is for some of us. And maybe all of us at some point in time, if we don't watch it, will become comfortable with the familiar if drama is the familiar. And the key thing is to shake ourselves out of that. And that's why here at Lead Life, we encourage people, when you know you want to go someplace you've never been, and it's a big part of your vision. I mean, your vision is big because it comes from an awesome dream. You've never been there. You have no clue how to get there. That's the best vision to have that comes from such a remarkable dream. But let me tell you something. Without a doubt, you're going to experience drama because you don't know what you don't know. And everyone who's been part of your old paradigm, your old existence is going to say, oh, don't worry about that. You're doing well here. Oh, no, we're comfortable with you here. How dare you? Don't worry about doing X or doing Y, just to stay with the rest of us. I know it's dreadful and there's misery here, but we love each other's company. It works, okay? But if you plow to get out of it, all of a sudden, you become the threat, like you experienced with your recent relationship, Christine. And if we allow ourselves to grow, there undoubtedly is at least one person, if not more, who will find it difficult to be in our space. And I've heard so many stories. I've experienced so many stories. The power is not in saying, oh, I must retreat. It's in doing what we know is more powerful, which is to pursue that vision, actualize those dreams as big dreams, and be the model that everyone else we love can follow if they choose to break out of those old paradigms.
Well, let me get back a little bit more, go a little bit more deeply with drama, because there are many different types of drama, okay?
Of course.
I'm not talking, when I use the term drama, I'm not talking about, for instance, in my own life, a couple of years ago, out of nowhere, I lost 40% of my retirement monthly income because one of my pension funds went bankrupt and it wasn't insured. So you could call that drama. But I'm not talking about that kind of drama. That's just stuff that happens in your life that you have no control over. And it's your job to problem solve your way out of that And in my case, I landed on my feet, so I'm grateful for that. So I'm not talking about the stuff that happens in life that you don't anticipate. I'm talking about drama that comes from other people. And there are different kinds of drama that come at you from other people. I've given you the example of a person who has deep childhood pains that have shaped who they are and have created in them a passive aggressive person. Um, and I can have compassion for the pain that this person is in, but I can't allow that the drama, which in this case manifests itself as passive aggressive behavior, to drive my life. I just can't. Um, and so letting go of the actions and choices of that person in order to create a space that allows me to flourish and go is important. There are other people who have drama because they see themselves as the victim, not necessarily because they have to be the victim, but because they choose to be the victim. And rather than taking responsibility for putting themselves in that place, they want to blame everybody else. It's always somebody else's fault. And they create all kinds of drama around that. I mean, Trump is a classic example of that. And and so that's a different kind of drama. Again, it comes from um, the drama of a person who just doesn't want to take responsibility for themselves. And I see Helen's got another question. But the other one that I wanted to talk about is there actually are people in this world who deal with anxiety, which is a real condition. And anxiety brings its own set of tradition, its own set of drama. And so you have to become more sensitive to the kind of drama coming at you from others that you need to deal with. Helen just posed a question about how about the drama within yourself that comes from your own life, your own being. And again, I think it just takes a great deal of courage. Now, you have to know yourself. Obviously, if I'm a pretty stable, go with the flow, not go with the flow, but I'm unflappable. Maybe that's a good word for me, unflappable. And so I can kind of quietly work through a lot of my internal stuff. Um, whether it's my identity as a biracial person, um, being at one point a corporate wife and mother versus having to reinvent myself. I mean, all of those things come with their own drama. But I guess at the end of the day, my core spiritual, because even though I've not studied, but sort of explored a lot of different spiritual beliefs, was raised Protestant, and my core belief as a Christian is that we do have one creator, supreme creator. We should love our creator, we should love our neighbors, and we should love ourselves. And in that, and for me, that is the essence, that love is my organizing principle, because that is, at the end of the day, the core principle of my religious faith tradition. And I suspect it's a core principle for a lot of people, whether they're religious or not. They could be atheists, but if being a loving person is at the essence of who they are. So trying to love myself, I have to look at all the aspects of who I am. I mean, do I identify myself as a biracial person, or do I identify myself as a Black woman? I mean, that's been the source of a lot of tension for me. A lot of people make all kinds of assumptions about me based on how I look. Now, I have my hair pulled back, but sometimes it's curly, sometimes it's straight. I have glasses on, maybe you can't see, but my eyes are actually green. and I'm relatively fair complected, you can imagine the kind of assumptions people have made about me and who I am over the years. I've been everything from Puerto Rican to Greek to Hawaiian. People, and only recently I had a Black woman say to me, "Oh," and she was lighter than I am, saying, "Oh, you're a wannabe Black person," or something like that, which I thought was interesting. I would have been hurt and offended by that a number of years ago. Now I just find it intriguing. I wonder what was behind that statement.
Well,
Uh,
she's projecting. I mean, we tend to say what our feelings are, right?
she's
What's wrong with
projecting, but
that?
I'm no longer defensive, I guess is what I'm saying. I've been doing a lot of work my entire life, but especially the past 15 years. And I just find that the deeper you go, I don't want to say it's easier, but you start forming habits and rituals. Like one is just holding my hands up when I'm afraid and I'm feeling this stress coming into me. I have learned to just stop, and I close my eyes and I take deep breaths and I hold up both hands and I say, love, fear, love, fear. Which one is going to guide your life? What house do you stand in? Love, fear. And now I don't even have to do that anymore because I know I'm going to choose love. And that takes me to a place of security, of just confidence. A lot of I know the insecurities on the other side. And then I can say, you know what? You can solve that problem. You can figure this out.
As we bring this to a close, you probably won't believe this, but it's already been an hour.
Oh my goodness.
Let
No,
me share. And I had a lot of questions, and I purposely didn't ask them because you went deep very quickly and you shared a lot of gems. The essence of my takeaway, and the takeaway is, I'm sure, varied in terms of who's viewing this, is that love, self-love, you're choosing to go within and to experience that love that you have for the Great Spirit, God, that you have for your neighbor, your loved ones, people you know, people you don't know. Fundamentally, a love for self enabled you to empower yourself in a
Mhm.
way that lifted you out of drama. You had to first know that you were, whether you were creating drama or you were part of drama or you were confronted with drama, that you had to go inside to get to a healthier place in order to acknowledge it. And on the path, you leverage loved ones. You didn't try to do it in isolation. And that's what a powerful takeaway. So many of us, because of COVID or even pre-COVID, are trying to do everything ourselves. We're inherently social beings. We need others, not necessarily all the same way. And we get to leverage others. And we encourage you, we here at Lead Live, don't try to do it alone. Allow yourself to leverage, whether it's professional support or even individuals you know have your back and you have difficulty outreaching to them, leverage them, even if you just share a little bit. And fundamentally, figure out a way to go within and go deep. Yes, it may be painful. Yes, most importantly, it will be revealing. And that inner voice, oh, wow, I call it intuition. You call it the little girl in you. We can call it all kinds of things. But there's a powerful, universal voice. There's a God sent, a great spirit sent inner knowing. And the
Mhm.
degree to which we allow ourselves to get connected to that inner knowing, oh my God, the vista is ours. Everything is actualized.
Absolutely.
And so I want to thank the Georgias of the world, the Helens of the world, and the many others who are viewing this and leveraging it for your contribution. And Helen Reed, she writes, thank you for what you do and are doing, Elnora. It is a pleasure to meet you through Christine. I look forward to meeting you in person, Helen. Thanks for letting me know about today's event, Christine. Let me tell you, folks, there's more. And so at some point, I'd love to have you come back as part of a panel because you have a lot to share as it relates to specific questions around leadership. And one that has to do, and I'm going to share this very, very quickly, and I apologize to others who are on their lunch break and you have to leave. You'll be able to look at this video later on. And that is around this notion of leadership. You were told so many times throughout your life, oh my God, you're the leader. Oh, Christine, default to her, etc. And whether it was the classic imposter syndrome, or you were literally like, what are you talking about? I'm just sharing an idea or sharing a perspective or doing what we all should be doing. I really want us to come back and talk about that, especially as it relates to women across this globe who are equally talented, and in some areas even more talented than many men that I've experienced, who are brilliant leaders. And yet so much of our cultures across the planet has just undermined women and girls and small children who are female from sharing their voices. We have a lot to share. We birth a lot, not only literally, but figuratively. We have a lot to contribute. And so thank you for choosing to contribute, Christine, over
You're
well
welcome.
in excess of 50 years, and for still contributing in your own humble way.
Well, thank you, thank you. And you might want to also talk with my friend Helen Stewart, because
Oh,
she is a phenomenal woman and an intuit.
oh,
So
wow.
she
I
can go
love
even
you.
deeper. Yep, she's pretty remarkable.
It's an honor. Thank you so much. And thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank
I definitely appreciate you, Christine. I love you. And thank you, everyone, for choosing to view this, leverage it, and share it. So please, if you're taking advantage of YouTube or Facebook or even LinkedIn, share it with folks if most useful. We're all about ensuring that your capacity to be the CEO of your lives, men and women, girls and boys, wherever you're at, is actualized. So use this to inspire you. Use whatever gems that you can implement right away. Just be your magnificent you. We appreciate you. And I want to thank you, Georgia. She writes, awesome. Christine, we met at the mobile station on Broadway a few years ago. I love it.
you.
I love it.
I remember. Wow, small world.
Well, with that, thank you. And always deep gratitude.
Thank you
Okay.
to you as well.